Okay, so I know you're familiar with cookies, and cookie is nothing but a small piece of text that is given by the web server to the client browser to keep it or to store it within the hard disk. And whenever the client browser visits the site back again, it returns that cookie back to the. Important thing about the cookie is it's a small piece of text and it has an expiry. So after the expiry date has been reached, the browser automatically deletes the cookie and it will not give any message to the server indicating whether it has deleted or it has kept the. Let's look at let's look at the way in which the HTTP protocol uses the cookie. Now, when we talk about the HTTP protocol, whenever the client makes a request for a given HTML page or a PHP or any page for that matter, this is the GET request of the HTTP protocol. If you open up the header of the HTTP, this is what the request looks like. So the GET word that you are using is actually defined in the protocol itself. And the last one indicates which is the version number of HTTP that the browser is using to communicate with the server. So when the client makes a request for a page, what the server will do is it's going to say that I can talk in the 1.1 version. 200 is the code number indicating that the message is okay, and then it sends the content back to the client indicating that I am sending you back a text interpreted like a HTML, and then it uses one other attribute in the header, and the header says set cookie, and it contains two things. One is the name and the other one is the value. So it's a key value pair that is sent by the server to the client. Because the cookie is sent in the header, it is transparent to the user. So the users of this client will not be able to understand or will not be able to figure out that the browser has actually received a cookie. The transfer of the cookie from the server as well as its retransmission back from the client towards the server is transparent. So the browser will not tell anything to the user unless and otherwise they ask the browser to do so. Now this is the important thing that you must understand. The cookie is done using the set cookie, which is an attribute of the HTTP protocol, and most of the programming languages use the same use a function with the same name called as set cookie to set the cookie. And because it is sent in the header, you must say to it that no other output is sent before the cookie is sent towards the client. Now, once the client receives the cookie, for any subsequent request, the client along with the request will send this cookie back to the server. So in turn, a cookie is nothing but a key value pair. The key is like a variable name. Value is the value that you set, that is sent back and forth from the server to the client or the client back to the server. What are some of the problems that you can face when you use the cookie? First of all, the client can disable the cookie. So a client browser can say that I'm not going to accept the cookie. Now there are many reasons why the people are going for disabling the cookie, because the cookie can be used to track the customer. For example, when you go to eBay, when you go to Google, or when you go to any other site that has an e-commerce site, they can use the cookie to track you down to find out where you are going within their e-commerce site, which are the category that you are usually visiting so that they can advertise better once they know your taste. Also, sometimes the cookie can be used to transfer some sensitive data from the browser to the server side. This can be done by embedding a JavaScript that will dynamically create a cookie and then start transferring it towards the server. So, because of the security threat, some people, in particular the corporate, will disable the cookie. So if the cookie is disabled, you will not be able to send anything to the client from your server side, and the client will not store anything. Next important thing, in the last class, again I have shown you that it is possible to view a cookie. So a client browser itself open up the cookie and shows it to the user, so user can use it, or user can see the content of the cookie. So if you store sensitive information like the password or this kind of thing, any other user will be able to open up the cookie and find out what is the password or what is the credit card number or this kind of thing. Next one is, once the user is able to view it, naturally they can tamper the content. So they can manipulate the content which is stored in the cookie. So it is not a foolproof way to store the detail. Some technical problem with the cookie is at most 4 KB text can be stored within the cookie. This is the limit that is being taken up by considering all browsers. Some of the browser accepts more than this amount, so it is not a de facto value. It is on an average, it is 4 KB. Some browser may be more than this, some browser is less than it, but in usual, most of them will not try to go beyond 4 KB. The next one is, at a time, most of the browser will not accept more than 20 cookies from the given site. So from your site, at maximum you can go for 20 cookies. Again, this is browser dependent. Some browser may accept more than this, but on an average, they will not accept 20 cookies. And at any instance of time, the browser in general will not store a cookie with more than 300 cookies with them. So if the cookie values goes beyond 300, the browser automatically deletes it. This is done by the browser automatically, and no information will be sent to the server indicating whether it has deleted or whether it has kept regarding this. The next one is, there are usually a problem with some of the browser which will not properly interpret the expiration time of the cookies, because it's a Unix timestamp. Some of the browser, the calculation goes wrong and the cookie will be there even if you ask them to delete it. Now what you can store in a cookie? Usually you can store a ID that will identify. Rather than storing all information in the cookie, usually you store an ID, and we use this ID to query the database and get the details of the user, either a query a database or a file to get the user information. We usually do not store a lot of information in the cookie, because you know very well, whenever a client comes back to you, that cookie is always sent back to you. So if you store 10 cookies, all the 10 cookies will come back to you whether you like it or not. So that's the reason it is not a good advisable thing to store the information in the cookie. Now let's store a lot of information in the cookie, as well as store too many cookies at the client. Now let's look at how do we create a cookie. There is I've already told you, there is an attribute called a set cookie in the HTTP, and the same function is available even in the PHP. So we have set cookie, key value pair, the name of the cookie, which is the key, the value when it is to be expired, the path where it is to be sent, the domain where it has to be sent, and whether you want to transfer it only in the secured environment. These are all possible ones, out of which the first two are important. This is a requirement. Key value pair is requirement whenever you create a cookie. So cookies are, again to remind you, cookies are sent on the header. So do not try to echo something out before you send the cookie to the user. Now all the possible things which are there, all these options which are available here. Let's look at each and every one of them. Name is the name of the cookie. Again, don't try to give a very lengthy name, but a descriptive name. Value, you cannot think of going beyond 4 KB. So do not try to store a very large value. And the expiry date is Unix expiry date. And the way in which we do it is we call the time function, and then we add the number of seconds we need to store it. The other one is the path where you want to get the cookie back. This is the path within your project where you want it, which subfolder or which folder when it is accessed you want that cookie to come. For example, if you have a subfolder for MCA, you can say that these cookies will come only to MCA. They are not supposed to be sent to the MBA. So if the user is accessing something inside this MCA folder, some cookies will come to them, and if they access some content, some page within the MBA folder, other cookie will go there. So you can reduce the traffic by saying if the browser is going to this particular location, then send few cookies, the cookies with which are marked over here, and if it is going to other folder within your project, send the other cookies. So that otherwise what will happen is whenever you visit any pages within your project, almost every cookie will come there, and it will be a bandwidth problem as well as it will irritate you, because you will have to, if you get all the cookies, then you have to filter out and find out which are the cookies that are relevant for this folder, and then try to take the action. The next one is the domain where you want the cookies to be sent. For example, if you, in the last class again I told you, you can say if you have a subdomain like mba.mit.edu, you can say it can go to a particular subdomain, or for example news.timesindia.com. If you want the cookies to go only to that subdomain, or advertisement.timesindia.com, then it will go only to that subdomain, or maybe some other things like in any other domain. For example, if you are going for eBay or the Flipkart, you can say the cookies will go to mobile.ebay.com, then only some cookies will come, or you can say television. If it is there, if such a domain is there, you can say you can filter the cookie where it is going. The last one is secure. Whether you want this cookie to be transferred only when it is an HTTPS protocol. That means to say that only when you have a secure connection you want to transfer this cookie, otherwise do not transfer the cookie. This you are doing it if you feel that the information that is there within the cookie is slightly sensitive and you don't want a hacker to get a hold on the content of the cookie. Remember, the cookies are plain text. Even though it is encoded, it can be opened up by any hacker who can receive your packet and read the content of inside it. So do not try to store the sensitive information, so which can either jeopardize your security or your client security in the cookies. So how do I create a cookie? You create the name. This is the name. This is the value, and this is the expiry time. How do you set all the parameters? Remember, these two are requirement. The others are optional. You can just say set cookie name and value. That's it. It's going to set the cookie. And if you want, you can do everything. So name value pair, followed by the expiry, where it is to be sent and which domain it is to be sent, and the last one is whether you want it to be transferred in the secured environment or not. In this case, the zero, the last zero indicates that this cookie can be transferred even when there is no secured connection. So ordinary HTTP request, send this cookie along with it. In other words, this information is not sensitive, so do not bother about waiting for a secure connection. The other way in which you can do it is you can directly write a header by using the header. In the previous class, I told you header and the location for a redirection. Now the header can be directly created using a function called as a header function and setting this value. So set cookie. If you notice that this word, I'll quickly go back to the place where I've shown you that diagram. Now, if you notice there, the first diagram that I showed you here, this is the header that it is trying to set. It is trying to set this header directly. You can do that thing. It is up to you. But usually nobody tries to manipulate the header for the sake of cookies. So, but you can do it. You can set the value directly in the header and it will go. When you call the set cookie, actually the PHP will create a header for you and it will try to send the same information to the other side, but this is slightly complicated one because it is case sensitive. If you miss out the case altogether, the browser will misinterpret it and then you will be in a bit trouble. Suppose if you have set the cookie, remember very important thing, when you send a cookie to the other side, immediately it is not available. So what do I mean by that is, suppose you have a client here and you have a browser here, and when you call set cookie, so this is there in a page. Let's assume that this code is there in a page and the browser requests that page. So when the browser requests that page, he or she is going to get that cookie and the cookie will be stored in the browser. Immediately on the same page, you will not be able to get any information on the cookie. Remember, the cookie is sent to the client now. Unless the client comes back, the cookie will not be available to you. So you have set the cookie there. What's the value that is sent? You will not be able to get. When the client comes back again, by clicking on some link or by refreshing this page, if they are coming back, if they are making a second request, that second request will contain the cookie. So always remember that. When you set the cookie, it just goes to the client side. You will have to wait until they come back again. When they come back, you get the cookie, then you can use it. Suppose if you have set the cookie like my cookie is equal to my value, how do I access the value of the cookie that I have stored? The way in which I do it is I use the global array called as the underscore cookie and then try to get the value from there. So once you set the cookie for any other page, including this page, once the cookie is sent, if you want to know what is stored in that cookie at the client place, just call this cookie and give the name of the cookie and you are going to get the value that is stored there. So what do I mean by that is, once this is the client, let's assume that this is your server, you set a cookie here by calling this set cookie on the page. If you want to know on some other page, if you want to know what was the value that was stored in this client by this particular page, when they are coming back to this page, just use this one, the global array followed by the name of the cookie that you have specified. What is that you are going to get out of this method? When you call this array, you are going to get the value that was stored on the client side, either the actual value or the manipulated value that the client has modified. Whatever it is, you are going to get the cookie value in any case. So again, this is an array. That means, and again I told you, you can set more than one cookie at a time. If you want to read all the cookies, use a for each loop or a for loop or a while loop to read all the content one after the other and then start displaying it. So it's an array. It's the same thing. If you want to manipulate an array, you can do that thing. So here is an example where I'm setting two cookies one after the other. Then on the other side, I'm going to read it. Remember, when this page is requested for the first time, you will not see any value here. Very important thing. If this, because these two are there on the same page, when this page is requested for the first time, when the client sees that thing, what you notice if you run this code as it is, what you notice is a blank page. Echo will not show anything. The for loop will not be executed. If you refresh it, that means if you re-request it, it's going to come. What's the meaning of this? When the client makes a request for this particular page, they have the cookie with them. So that cookie is there, it is just sent. So this for loop will not work because there is no cookie which is there. You have set the cookie there. If you re-request it again, that by pressing F5 or refresh or by going back to the same page again, this time when you refresh it, these two cookies will go back to the client, and then when you call this method, there will be two cookies, and this for loop will start executing, and you are going to get the value, whatever value you set, that value is going to come back. Very important thing again, you may or you may not notice depending upon the version number, but it is always advisable to keep the cookie at the top side. If you don't get it, well and good. Not all the versions will do that thing. But if you get this message, it just means to say that if you get this message saying that cannot modify the header because the header is already sent, it just means to say that the header is already sent to the client side. Then the PHP says, now I cannot set the header again. It's already gone, and I will not be able to do anything after this. So what is that you are supposed to do? Put the cookie before sending the header. So what is the change that you will see? Setting the cookie is transferred right at the top. So the right way of doing it in all cases is set the cookie first, then try to do anything including the doc type and all these things to the client side. The next one is how many values can you store? At a time you will be able to store one value within the cookie. If you want to store more than one value, you can concatenate them and then make a large string, then store it onto the client side. So what I am storing here is I am trying to get the server. This is one other global array that is used to get the details of the client. Suppose if you want to know which is the browser that is used by the client, you can use that $_server global array to get it. There are many other options which are available, like you can get the remote address, the IP of the particular user, including the page that the user has made a request. You can get almost everything. Again, if you want to know the environment, you can use the other global array _PHP and specify. These are the keys that you are supposed to specify. If you want to know how many such keys are there, a bundle of them are there. Go to php.net and they have the constant that you are supposed to type within those arrays. Now, what is being done here is I am concatenating this whole thing, the address, the browser, and the operating system, and I am setting that as a cookie. That's simple as that. I concatenate many values, make it as single piece, and then send it across to the other side. When I read it back, how do I read it back? My field separator is the double colon. So I get the string and I explode it using the explode function to split it into individual pieces, and then I start using it. Now, the good part about the PHP is you can store an array kind of thing into the cookie. So instead of storing the values like this, instead of storing one value, key and a value pair, you can store arrays. So you can say cookie of 0, cookie of 1, or you can even have an associative array and then store it. So you can have an array-like thing stored on the client side. Then how do you retrieve it? When you retrieve it back, you can read it like, see the name that is given is cookie, and this is an array. So if you want to retrieve it back, cookie followed by a name, what you get is an actually array you can print the value of that array there. So you get an array there. Similarly, if you want to get the other one here, cookie 1 is there, you can use the for loop to retry the value. So at a time, you can concatenate them, make it as a single string, send it, then take it back and split them and then start using it, or put them as an array and then send it across to the other side and read them back as a array. Now, a few things about the expiration. If the value of the expiration is 0, that means you are telling the browser to not to store it in a persistent storage device. In other words, you are telling the browser not to save this cookie into the hard disk, keep it in the memory so that when the browser is closed, the cookie also gets automatically destroyed. So it means to say that the cookie has to be destroyed when the browser is closed. If you have a expiration time in future, whenever that time occurs, the cookie will be destroyed. If you have a negative value, what's the meaning of saying negative value? Is something that has already passed. So you are telling the browser that you have stored something in your hard disk, now destroy that cookie. How do you tell that thing to the browser is, you set a time that is already passed. So in the expiration, you tell the browser that the cookie is already expired. So if you set the cookie for today, and if you say that after 1 week, destroy this cookie, and after some time you feel that no, that is too much, I want to destroy this cookie, and then maybe send a new cookie. In that case, what you do? Send one more information back to the browser and tell the browser that instead of 1 week plus, make 1 week minus, or maybe 1 day minus, or 1 minute minus, anything that is feasible. So when you send some date which is already passed, what the browser will do is it will go to that cookie and automatically destroy that cookie for you. Okay. The other way, the next one is, how do you overwrite a value which is already there? You have stored some value on the cookie, you want to change the value. Send the cookie back again with the new value. Same key but new value. It will be overwritten on the client side. So if you want to rewrite the cookie, remember, you cannot say write to the cookie or you can't do something because the cookie is there on the browser. So it is not like calling some method, do this and that, or calling some function. It's not going to work. You have to tell the browser to handle that cookie. So if you want the values to be changed, send a same cookie with the same key but different value. Automatically the browser will change it. Again, if you want to change the expiration time, send the same cookie, that is cookie with the same key or the same name, and change the expiration time. It will override the expiration time whenever you send that particular thing. So here I have set a cookie, and suppose if I want to remove that cookie, set the some value like current time minus 3600. That means I think this is going to be 1 hour. 1 hour before this time. That means when the cookie reaches there, you are just telling the browser that the cookie has expired 1 hour ago. Then what the browser will do is it's going to just delete that cookie for you. So let's go back to the math function now, and let's see some of the math function. I will quickly go through this math function. Few things that you must understand before I forget. On Saturday you will have a class test. 20 questions will be there, and it will be a MCQ type question. Followed by that, in the next week you will have the practical test. So this is not the internals. This is the class test. In both the sides, it will be there. Okay. Let's go back, and the syllabus is there. Whatever I cover, and again, I don't have to remind you that you are supposed to return that DVD back. And every week when you return it, I will rewrite and immediately give it back to you. So if you delay that thing, the content that I am supposed to give it to you will be delayed altogether. So when I give it to you, just copy it to your hard disk and then return that DVD back to me so that I can rewrite the content and then give you the updated content. So let's go back to the, I'll come back to this math function. The math functions that you have seen in the other programming language are identical to this, so there is nothing new that is there in the PHP. One thing you must understand is it is based on the PHP itself was based on C, so the data types will be that of C. So you have the integers are long and the floating point numbers will be double. So you get that whenever you do the mathematical function. And like all the other programming language, you have a lot of mathematical constant that you can think of using. For example, you have a pi, m underscore pi. If you use it, you will get the value of the pi, which is a very lengthy number. Again, you have exponential constant. You have the log to the base 2, log to the base 10, and so on and so forth. I have given you a link if at all you are really interested in how many such other constants are available. You have square root here, math square root of pi, and 2 by square root of pi, and maybe square root of 2, square root of 3 functions are there again. 1 by square root of 2. If at all you want to really use that kind of thing in a highly scientific calculation, you can always do that. The next one is the absolute. This is same as the absolute function in the C programming language. It will return an absolute value without the sign. Absolute means without the sign. So if it is minus, it will be written without the sign. If it is plus, it will be written without the sign. That's all. Any number, absolute value of it is without the sign. The next one is the seal and floor. The same thing. Seal means taking it to the higher value. Floor means getting it down to the lower value. So seal of 4.3 is sealing it at the top level. What comes after 4 point something is the next integer number will be 5. So it is sealed to the next value. What comes after 9.9 is 10. The next integer value. It's going to seal it to the next integer value. If you notice over here, 4.3, it has not crossed the 0.5 limit. I don't know whether if you are familiar with this rounding function. In this rounding function, usually what happens is there is this limit called as 0.5. So usually you have this 0.5. If the value goes beyond the 0.5, when you try to round it, it just goes to the top value. If it is below this 0.5, it is just brought down to the previous value. However, if you notice over the seal here, seal is actually taking to the top value regarding of the value. 4 point something, seal it means you are just taking to the next integer value. What is floor is exactly opposite. Anything dot something, floor it means take it down to the previous integer value. 4.3, bring it down is 4. 9.99, very close to 10, bring it down to 9. So floor it to the down value. The next one is the round, which you are already familiar. So what is the difference in the round? In the round, if the value is less than 0.5, it's going to be brought down. So if it is less than 0.5, it will come down. 5.5 and above, it will be taken to the next integer level. So 3.4 round means 3 because it has not crossed that 0.5 up limit. It has not crossed. 0.5 means it has crossed. 0.6 it has crossed. Again, you can say to the next digit. So it just means to say that if you say 3.0, 0 means I do not want to see any decimal values. So just round it up to the next integer value. If you say that I want to see 2 decimal digits here, that means it will be rounded up to 2 decimal digits. So if you look at here at this location, you are rounding up to only these 2 locations. After these 2, you have 5. 5 means the next value has to be taken. So what is going to come is this 0.5, whatever 5 is there, that will be added to here. So what you are going to get is 6. If it was 4 here, you would have got 1.95. How did we got that thing? This is the number of decimal places up to which you are supposed to round it up. If this was this value was 3 here, instead of this, if it is 3, then what you would have got is 9.5, and this is the third decimal place here. After 3, you have 8 here, so it's going to be 1 carried forward, so it's going to be 9.56. So that indicates how many decimals. So if this was 3 here, that means 3, round it up to 3 decimal places. Now what will happen if you say minus? Minus means bring it down to the value. So here it is minus 3 here. What does that mean? From here, take this 3 values. So what is going to happen now is you have 7 here. If you notice this one, this will be brought down here to make it as 1 will be changed to 2, and after that it is rounded up, other values will be pulled up. There is no decimal digit here. If you notice, it's just a plain integer value, and we are saying that bring it down to the maybe thousands or something in that case. So it may be useful when you have something like a product number in some serial number, something. Usually you know very well your register number, for that matter, is actually a combination of the year, the subject, the university, like that. Even though it is coded register number, in some scenario you may be because it's a lengthy number, you may want to pull out something. How do you do that thing is, you know very well there is this string manipulation functions which will allow you to get the substring out of it. But the problem is when you join say Mangalore University, I'm just giving an example. If you have joined in the year 2014, and let's say if it is university is Mangalore University, say code is 0.5, and for MCA the code is 3. This will be followed by your register number. Now, if you want to say that after this, I don't want these values, but I am only interested in the first part, then what you can do is pull them out and make them as zeros, and then retain the remaining value, and then maybe do whatever you want to do with it. So sometimes it will be helpful. There are constants that you can apply instead of just typing this -2, 1, 3, 2, and 0 of this type. So instead of doing this, the PHP provides you with the constant. Some of the constants which are useful to us is round half up. That means it's the usual thing. After half, that is 0.5, round it up. So 9.5, round it up means usual thing 10. Round half down means at 0.5, do not, if it is 0.5, don't take that 0.5 to the 10, instead bring it down to the below one. So 0.5 will not be taken up to 10, instead it's going to get it down. So at this, say sometimes you may have some scenario wherein if it is 0.5, you don't want to take it to the top, you want to keep it down. After 0.6, 0.7 or anything, you want to take it to the next level. In that case, what will happen at 0.5? If you want that 0.5 to come down or up, you can use say either take it up or down. The other one is half even, half off. What's the meaning of this is I have 0.5, 9.5 here, and then I'm saying that next even number, I want the next even number, round it to the next even number. So that means to say that I don't want an odd number to come, go for the next nearest top even number. In the same way, you can say go for the nearest odd number. So sometimes maybe like you want to give it in pairs. You are selling something, you want to give it in pairs. So 0.5 has come. You want the even values. So you want that pair value. So you just say take it to the next even number or bring it down to the next odd number. This one is the power x to the power n. You know very well base to the power n. So if you want to get 2 to the power n, so this is what you are going to get. This is equivalent to saying 2 to the power 8. And similarly, minus 1 to the power 20. So if it is an odd power, it's going to be there. 0 to the power 0 is 1. This is going to be minus 1 to the power 5.5. If the PHP cannot calculate it, it will give a false value and it will raise an error saying that I cannot do this value. So if, what's the meaning of this one? What is 0.5? What's the meaning of this? So it just means to say that it is minus 1 to the power 5 to the power 1 by 2. So 0.5 means half. This was usual thing. How do you find the square root using this function? If you want to find the square root using this function, what you will do? So if you want to find the square root of 16, how do you find that thing? 16 to the power 0.5. So 0.5 means half. So what is the meaning of saying half? It just means to say that 16 to the power 1 by 2. Or in other words, it just means to say that 16 square root of this. So how do you find the cube root of it? 1 by 3rd, 1 by 4, fourth root, and so on and so forth. It is by 2 or get the value. So if it is instead of this, if it was the 0.4, what is the meaning of this? So 1/4 of it, and so on and so forth. You get the way in which you can. You don't have to do the square root using the power function because already a efficient function is available, and that is the square root function. One important thing to be noted is it takes a float value and it returns the float value back to you. So your integer value will be converted into a floating point numbers. So be careful with that. The next one is the max value. Max is used to find the maximum among the given value. So you have used this max function in either Excel or other things. So it's going to work in the same way, but few changes are there. One of the changes is, suppose if you have a number like this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ordinary one, if you say what's the maximum among them, is going to be 7. Suppose if you have an array, this is an array with the number 2, 4, 5. So this is even though it looks like this one, it's actually an array with the value inside it. So you have an array with the value 2 and with the value 4 and so on and so forth. It will go through the array, and within the array, whichever element is the maximum, it's going to find. So if you have an array, and if you want to find among this array which is the maximum value, like you may have a scores of all the students in an array, and if you want to find who has scored the highest value, just use the maximum of that array. Automatically, it will fetch the maximum value. The other one is max can be used with the string. This is an integer 0. This is a string hello. Now, string hello cannot be converted into a numerical value. So, hello, there is no equivalent numerical value for the hello. In this case, the PHP will take the things that it cannot convert. It's going to take it as a 0 value. So, it will take the numerical 0 as that value. So, hello, it takes it as a 0. So it compares 0 and 0. The highest among 0 and 0 is the maximum among 0 and 0 is the 0 itself. However, when you put them in the other order, other way around, it takes this as 0 and it compares 0 with the 0, but this comes first. So in the previous case, 0 came first, so it showed it. You may have some other numbers here, maybe -1, -2, and so on and so forth. 0 came first, 0 then followed by one more 0. This will be converted into 0. So 0 followed by 0 and maybe something else. 0 is the maximum. It's going to show it here. Next time, internally it will take this as 0, but because hello came first, it will return the value as hello. So even though the string cannot be converted, hello cannot. There is no equivalent of hello, numerical equivalent of the hello, but hello is considered as 0, and it came first in the list, so it is taken as the maximum value and it's going to give it. In the other case, if you notice 42, it's a string here. 42 can be converted into its numerical value. So it then takes the numerical value of that string, which is 42, and obviously it's going to return back that 42 to you. The next one is minus 1 and hello. You know very well that minus 1 is less than the numerical equivalent of this. Hello will be treated as a numerical 0. So it then starts comparing minus 1 with 0. 0 is greater than minus 1. But instead of giving you 0 numerical value of it, it just gives you the actual value that was given over here. Now in this case, two arrays are there. One has number 2, but there are 3 elements are there. In the other, there are 4 elements are there. So one array is larger than the other array. It is not the value which is there in the array. It's a number of elements. 3 elements are there. Here 4 elements are there. So the second array is larger than the first array. It just returns the second array which is larger. In the other case, arrays have the same size. Both of them have the same size. In this case, it will then start comparing one array with the other array. So it starts comparing 2 with the 2. Both are same. So again, after that, it will go with the 4 with the 5. But it finds that 5 is greater than 4. Then it decides that this is the highest one. Even though the next value, you notice over here, 8 is 7 than great. Once it finds something greater in one of the array, it just outputs that as the result value. So this will happen only if the 2 arrays are of the same size. If one of the array has the greater size, the greater size array will be automatically ejected out. The next one is you are trying to compare a string with the array and with the number. The length of the array is always larger than anything that you try to compare. So immediately it will put out the array saying that array is the largest among them because all the others are scalar. Array has a container structure, so it is larger. Identical to the maximum, you have one more function called as the minimum. It does the same thing that the maximum does, but in the other way around. Among this, 1 is the smallest one, it's going to give you. In this array, 2 is the smallest, it's going to give you. Hello and this one, hello is the least one, it's going to give you. Hello and this one. Remember, both are same value. One of them will be thrown out. In this case, hello and minus 1, if you notice, minus 1 is greater than the numerical equivalent of hello, which is 0. So it gives you minus 1 as the minimum among the 2 values. The same thing is true. 2 arrays with the same thing. 2, 4 and 8. 4 is less than 5. So it just picks up the 1. And in the other one, naturally, this will not come out because it's the largest one. The other values is going to come. If you notice over here, string is a text. There is no numerical value for it. So this will be considered as 0. And if you compare 0 with any one of them, 0 must be the least numerical value of the string is treated as 0. And then it outputs that particular thing. There are other functions are there, sine, cos, the sine inverse, cos inverse, tan inverse, and you have the conversion, base conversion from one binary to octal, octal to binary, and so on and so forth, like degrees to radians and so on and so forth. These are the values which I've copied it as it is from the PHP site. So if you are really interested, go to the PHP site, php.net, to get the real functions behind it.